Anyway, just for the people who haven't met me, I came from Winnipeg. I've been in this since before they invented dirt, back in 1975. Had a sighting. I was raised very religious, like I was supposed to be a minister, and I remember when I first saw it, I went, oh, there are miracles. So it's like, holy cow, this is for real. And it's like, it was just like blew me away. And then 2 nights later, I saw it came right at me a second night, and then I started to interview people there, and I had a lot of sightings for about a year. I had 5 close sightings, and then I wasn't interested. Like people say, I want to see a UFO. I have no interest whatsoever. It's like I've seen it, I know it's there. I was just trying to figure out like what's going on. Somebody's got to know what's going on here. I don't know what's going on. Somebody's got to know. So I started this pursuit that took me to the, you mentioned my father was a pilot for the Department of Transport, and somebody in his office had worked for the Canadian government program studying UFOs, they call them flying saucers, back in the early 50s. And I thought, well, that's pretty synchronistic. There was only about 5 people in the program, and this one guy was in my father's office. I'm going like, what's the chance of that? So I studied what the Canadian government knew, and they were the ones that talked about the ships. They had a woman. So what they were doing is what I'm doing, is you're trying to find someone who has the answers. You're trying to find somebody who's intuitive, can get in the field, something like that. They got higher knowledge or whatever. And so the Canadians were using a woman named Frances Swan, who was a channeler in Maine, in Elliott, Maine, which is right down the street from Betty Hill, which is kind of weird because she was into the good guys. She called them the good guys, the blondes, and then Betty Hill. That's when the Greys started. Most people don't realize the Greys didn't start till '61, except you had one before that.
Not sure.
So they when they took her, when Betty Hill had her experience, they took her to the Frances Swan and said, oh, she knows what's going on. And Frances Swan says, you were dealing with the Greys, they're the bad guys, get out of here. And she threw her out of the house. And so the Canadians were told by Frances Swan, and the Canadians were watching her very closely. So were U.S. Navy intelligence, so was CIA, so was FBI. They were all watching this woman in Elliott, Maine. And they actually, if there's a documentary called UFOs That Has Begun, which you can look up on YouTube, it was 1979, and they talk about a case there where they channel an alien at the National Photographic Interpretation Center at the CIA, which is where they analyze all the U-2, the SR-71 spy photographs and stuff. And the guy that ran that lab was a big UFO guy, and so when he heard one of his guys had learned to channel from this woman, they brought him in, and they said, okay, let's talk to the alien, and this is on this documentary. It has UFOs That Has Begun, and they sit the guy down, and he starts to do this automatic writing, and then they're asking these questions, and then Art Lundahl, the guy at the CIA guy, said, okay, we want some evidence, and then the guy goes from automatic writing to actually talking. He said, what do you want? And he said, we'd like you to show yourself. When? Now. Go to the window. And they go to the window, and this is in this documentary, and it's told by the head of Blue Book that tells the story, and this UFO flies by the window. Well, she told the story that there was crafts that were, the one that she was dealing with at the channel at the CIA was named AFA, and AFA was in a craft that was 150 miles across, and then Ponar was another one that she was channeling, and it was 250 miles across. And if you go back to 1954, you'll see in Aviation Week and Space Technology, New York Times, that what they had is the Americans, it was all this pre-missile stuff, and they were all getting ready, and they had over-the-horizon radar. And the Americans had developed this over-the-horizon radar, and they turned the thing on, and these 2 objects appeared. And so this was in New York Times, and they were talking about these 2 objects that were going around the Earth. And then they said, oh, they were natural satellites, but if they're natural satellites, they should still be there, and they're not there. So anyway, that was the first one I had with the large crafts. And then you mentioned Susie Hansen. So Sue Hansen's the sort of top researcher in New Zealand, and she's had a lot of encounters with the Greys. She's written 2 books called Dual Soul Connection, and I can't remember what the second book's called, but they're really
it's just that one I'm aware of.
Yeah, she's
planning a second one.
Well, I think the second book's out, but hers is very interesting. So she tells these stories that sort of link up. So when I hear a lot of stories, I like to hear people's stories because I go, Oh, I've heard that before. And it's kind of a weird thing that they don't even realize that it's an important part of the story. So she's telling the story that at one point they say to her, okay, watch Susie, we're going to make the room bigger. So she's in the room with them and the white walls, and she says the walls start to move and they move and they move and they move. They keep moving, they keep moving, they keep moving. And she said it got so big she couldn't see the walls anymore. It was that big. And then I wrote a book called UFO Sky Pilots, where 36 people all sort of synchronistically all come to me and they start telling me they've flown the craft, which is totally, the first woman was in her 70s. This happened in 2013. Her name was Pam Dupuis. And I remember she was telling me, I do remote viewing for the government, and I've been abducted. And she's going through all this stuff, and I'm going, yeah, whatever. Listen to these stories. And we're at this woman's house that hosted the conference, and she's telling all this stuff, and it's like, whatever. And then she says, oh, and I was flying the craft last night. And I said, you were what? She says, I was flying the craft last night. I said, you were flying the craft? I was like, yeah, I'm ready to throw her out of the house. I said, you were insane, lady. And I'm thinking, all I could think in my head was Saudi Arabian woman. At that point, weren't allowed to drive a car unless there was a man in the car. And I go, they let you fly the craft? No insurance, no license, they didn't teach you, nothing. She said, no, I've flown 3 different crafts. And I'm going, well, how do you fly a craft? She says, oh, you do it with your mind. And what had happened was in 2012, I went to the Canadian government, then I went to this guy by the name of Dr. Eric Walker. I was head of a team of researchers trying to get him to talk. He's the highest level official who's ever talked about UFOs. He was had 14 honorary doctorate degrees, president of Penn State University, did reports for Eisenhower, on the Defense Science Board, just the top military think tank. He was the chairman of the board. It was just, and he was telling us stuff like, leave it alone, there's nothing you can do about it, unless you've got the mind of Einstein, you're wasting your time and stuff like that. So we were after him, and he at one point he mentioned the fact that, what do you know about ESP? Let me ask you a question. What do you know about ESP? And the guy said, I don't really. And he said, look, unless you understand about ESP and how it works, you will not be taken in. So in 2012, I have this experience where I'm watching Colin Anders, the guy who's famous for crop circles. I had no interest in crop circles, and it's one of these conferences like you go to, and it's like all day long. It goes from 8 o'clock in the morning till 11 o'clock at night, and you don't want to go on lectures. You go, and then it's just now I'm going for lunch, and you go for lunch, and I'll go watching this guy at 5 o'clock, and they have all these different, especially there, you got 3 different lectures going at the same time, and you're trying to figure out where you're going to go when and stuff like that. So I think, I don't really going to watch him. Not that, he's a pretty prominent researcher. I've never seen him speak before. I'll go watch him. And it's like this idea where you use meditation, use your protocols and stuff like that. And I wrote a book called Contact Modalities, which is the idea that we're in a field. So we're in the dark. We're in the bottom of the ocean. We're in dark. And then at certain times you meditate, and suddenly your vibration goes and you sort of float higher in the water, and you see these things swimming around, and you go, what are you? And they go, we're fish. And you go, wow, what level am I on? And the fish go, you're not on any level, you're in the water, you idiot. And the more you can get up there, the closer you get to the top of the surface, the more you can see. And it's the light is at the top. And so this was this idea. So I had this download experience in 2012. So I'm watching Colin Anders, and all of a sudden this came into my head, and people will describe, I think you described it, this idea of a knowing. So you have people who are rational, analytical, and they have theories, and they're trying to prove the theories and stuff, and they're just guessing. And it's a theory, it's a guess. So the rational, analytical, you have your idea, I have my idea, we argue with each other, whatever. But a person who has an experience knows, I know this is right, and it's called a knowing. And that's what happened to me. It's like, oh, that's how it works. And I said, it's consciousness. The whole thing's consciousness. That answer, because in '75 when I was watching the second night fly away, I said, that's amazing, but what's it doing? It's not doing anything. We made a joke. We said, oh, they're coming to get Canadian beer. It's the Americans coming out to get Canadian beer. And they're going back again at the end of the night. Because we couldn't figure out why they're doing this little town. It didn't make any sense. So it said this consciousness thing. And then this woman appears in 2013, and she tells me that you fly the craft with your mind. And then suddenly I had 36 people all coming to me, Whitley Strieber, all these people, all these sort of stories about flying the crafts and stuff like that. And I started to move away from, because I did the presidents. I went from Walker, this guy with 14 honorary doctorate degrees, to the president. I go, the president's got to know what's going on. He's the most powerful guy in the world. He's got to know what's going on. So I went to all the presidential libraries. I'm trying to find out which presidents have seen stuff. And I was really not getting anywhere. It's sort of like where everybody is today. I'm waiting for disclosure. Are they going to tell us what's going on? Like, tell me what's going on. And I just got sort of frustrated, and then this knowing came to me. It was about consciousness. So then I shifted my whole focus away from UFOs. I'm really not that interested in UFOs anymore. I follow it all and all this kind of stuff. But in terms of the whole phenomenon, as I started looking at weird things like, for example, what I call them crossovers. We just wrote two books on this whole thing. It's called The Big Game, and it's all these parallels between different paranormal phenomena. Like, you just don't have a UFO experience. It's usually, I say, you had that experience? What happened when you were a child? Oh yeah, I lived in a haunted house. And they start going on about all these weird other things that happen there, and they don't think they're related. And they're basically all related. So I started this thing down the field of consciousness, and I would get things like, for example, I've got a friend of mine who's a Mormon guy in Utah, and he has sort of a negative experience when he first starts. So that's what you'll find is your first one, because you've never seen anything. Your first experience will be very frightening, but the more excitings you have, the more you suddenly realize, like Chris Bledsoe, when he had his first experience, he was devastated because he was a very religious guy and he was just sort of blown away. And now you can't shut the guy up. He thinks he's the Messiah. He's running around, and he's telling everybody what's going on. Because the more sightings you have, the more you realize, like, no, nothing happened to me, and I've been chosen. And that's what you get is people. You start to feel like they came for you. They end up in your bedroom, not by accident. They came for a reason. They want you to do something. And you'll say to people like, "What's your sense of mission?" And most people will say, 1 to 10. What's your sense of mission? And most people say, 10 or 11. It's like they all say, "What's your mission?" I don't know, but I know I'm supposed to do something. I'm supposed to do something, or people know what their mission is, and they'll tell you what their mission is. And that's this whole idea that you may have multiple lives, and you plan to come in here to do something. You didn't come here by some random, you got thrown into the mix or whatever. You plan to do something, and then when you leave, they only ask you one question: how did it work out? And you go, "Oh, I forgot to do this. I was going to do that. I got scared. I was going to, all this sort of thing, because your plan, your life, and all this kind of stuff." So I moved this whole thing to consciousness. And then everything started to fit together. Everything started to come together. So you get things like crossovers that people really don't realize. Like, so this Ron Johnson guy, he was one of the guys that flew the craft. And so I said, "So what happened?" And they said to me, "Okay, Ron, it is within you. Go within yourself. When you can imagine it, then we'll go there." Because he wanted to see the Milky Way from a distance. And then I had another one who told me exactly the same thing. And I went, "That's what Ron Johnson said." So what would happen is he said, he would imagine the thing, and then he said, "We will go there." And he said there was this intense G-force for 1 second, just intense G-force. And he said the window opened up and there was a Milky Way off in the distance. And the other one he told was, he said his being, and there's always the being, like when you got a name, didn't you tell me your name? Because when you ask somebody, like, who do you deal with? Like you say there's a bunch of aliens, but there's usually one person you're dealing with. And then the question is, okay, so what's the guy's name you're dealing with? I don't want to ask about the rest of the aliens. And this Ron was Elby. I deal with Elby. His name is Elby. And so Elby takes him to the spirit world 3 times. So then the question is, well, if he's an alien from Alpha Centauri or wherever he's from, like, why are you going to the spirit world? This doesn't make any sense. So he takes him to the spirit world. The first time he was in sort of in the dark, like people who have near-death experience will talk about, they're in the darkness first. And then the second time he could hear his mother, he could talk to his mother, but he couldn't see his mother. The third, he said, it was as real could be. He's in a field, he's with his dead mother, they're standing there, and they're in this field, and then there's this building sort of in the distance, and he says to, his mother says, "Ron, when you die," because he's only got 13% of his heart left, he's in hospice care right now, and she says, "When you die, you're going to get a room in this building." And it looked like a Mormon temple, because of course he's a Mormon guy, so it's reflective of what you believe. That's what you're going to see. So he sees this temple, and then he says, "Your father's got a room in the building," and this portal sort of opens, and you can see his father in this room. So then they walk in there, and then he says, "Randy," says, "Oh, the building was just the weirdest thing you've ever seen. It was like 10 or 100 times the size inside it was outside." I go, "Are you in a UFO, or are you in a temple in the spirit world?" Because people who go Chris Bledsoe, lots of them will report this. Chris Bledsoe said, he flew the craft. So I said, "Tell me how you fly the craft." And he's one of the most famous experiences there is. And he said, "I was there," and he said it was like 30 feet across. And I looked, and I went inside, and it was like the size of a football stadium inside. And he looked back outside, it's 30 feet across. He went back inside, it was the size of a football stadium. So when this Ron Johnson guy tells me he's in the spirit world with his alien, and he's in this temple, I'm thinking, are you in an alien? Are you in a spacecraft? Are you in a spirit world? And then he told me that his mother takes him down the hall in this big building, and there's these crystals. So there's another crossover that people don't realize. And I said, crystals? You got crystals? Tell me about the crystals. He said, well, you could look at them at a certain angle, and then you can see your life, your past life, and you can see a plan for your future life. And then his mother said, you haven't got a crystal run. They're coming out of this crystal. You haven't got a crystal yet because you haven't died yet. As soon as you die, your crystal will come up, and then you'll be able to look at your life and stuff like that. And so he said his dog's crystal was there, and he looks in the crystal at a certain angle, and he said, I never knew, 1972 his dog died, his dog disappeared, he never knew what happened to it. And in the crystal, he could see what happened. The neighbor came, shot the dog, threw it in the back of the truck, and put it to the junkyard, and threw it out in the junkyard. And so this idea, and then I'm saying, this is a crossover. There's a documentary called UFOs Past, Present, no, UFO Cover-Up Live. And on that, they tell the story. There's this Air Force intelligence guy said, the most amazing thing he ever saw was a crystal. The aliens had this crystal. And you could look at it at a certain angle, and you could look in the angle, and they showed the American government the crucifixion of Jesus on this crystal. And I'm going, like, this is the same story. It's exactly the same story. And I'm a big fan of Michael Newton. So Michael Newton is this guy who regresses 7,000 people. And he regresses them to the spirit world, and then he brings them back. And they all say the same thing, this whole thing about how they come into the spirit world and the different colors of your being, your in essence is a ball, and you're a different color, and there's different colors, and you have the life review and all this kind of stuff. And Michael Newton talks about you planning your lives, you go into these big, huge libraries, and you open these books, and there's this crystal in there. And you look in the crystal at a certain angle, and that's how you plan your future lives, and stuff like that. And so you see these crossovers, and you go, hey, this is much more complex than alien stuff. And people mention I was on this big podcast called Area 52. And of course, as soon as you get off the podcast, you think, I wanted to make, I forgot to completely make it. And this whole thing, my theory is that what I believe is that the whole thing is just, I call it the theory of wow. That what's happening is you're dealing with a higher level intelligence that is going into your head, making a lesson based upon what's in your head, and that all they want you to do is go, wow, what's going on here? They want you to think. And that's what Einstein said. Mystery is at the basis of all scientific discovery. Then until you're curious, you're not going to do any research. You're not going to try to figure out anything. And that's what they're trying to do, is make you curious. So when we were talking about this whole thing about the theory of wow, and the best example was that people will say, okay, it's this, it's that. And I say, the one case you got to look at is Skinwalker Ranch. So Skinwalker Ranch, you have dogs. You have a dog, the size of a human, standing on his back hind legs, standing against a fence, smoking a cigarette. And I mean, so are there actually dogs on another planet that smoke cigarettes and came 1,000 light years here to do this? And then you start to see these things, you start to realize, like, maybe it's not what we think it is, and it's actually much more. And it'll come down based upon your beliefs and get across the lesson it wants. But I fully agree that there's nothing to worry about this thing. There's and the highest level people have talked about that. What you're seeing is in the United States is this thing where they're trying to up it for military. They want money. They want the military weapons. And so the one guy actually, he's a guy who told a story about the craft. It was a very important story. This is Jack Sarfati. He's a big physicist, claims he knows how UFOs propelled and stuff. He talks about this craft, which I think is at Pox River. It's a Navy facility on the East Coast, and Lockheed was going to give the craft to Bigelow Aerospace because they couldn't figure it out. They could not do anything with this craft, and they didn't get in the craft till 2011. And the idea that I was told by this physicist was that the craft is not only alive, it's not only conscious, it actually will not let you in the craft unless your consciousness is at the right vibration level. If your consciousness is at the right vibrational level, you don't get in the craft. They couldn't get in the craft. They couldn't figure. So they asked this Lakatsky, this guy that ran the U.S. government UFO program, how'd you get in the craft? And he said, I can't talk about it. And this is this whole deal. And then you look at near-death experience, and you see near-death experience people talk. They're in this building. We go to this building, and there's all these different rooms. and you can only go in the rooms at your vibration level. You can learn lessons, and the doors will open like molten metal. It'll open up, and you go in and learn your lesson and come back, but you can't get into spots that you're not allowed to get in. So that's that idea that until you vibrate at the right level, you ain't getting off the planet. It's not like they're forcing us here. It's vibration that gets you off the planet. It's understanding, and that we're stuck here. So to me, the whole thing is sort of shifted in terms of, I believe we're dealing with a higher intelligence, and so I just call it the intelligence. It can come as whatever you want, and I've had a number of experiences. So I look at people who trans-channel, people who've gotten in the field, because a lot of 40% of all UFO experiencers and 70% of all near-death experiencers will say at one point during their experience they knew the answer to everything in the universe, and they weren't allowed to bring it back. So the whole idea is the answer to everything in the universe is already there, and these people are tapping into it. So if you want to find out the answer, you got to find these people who are able to go into this higher level and bring this stuff back down. And my shift has been like almost completely now, where I do the Nancy's talking about DNA, so I do this DNA experiment. I usually I get these downloads, and they're never wrong. But this one wasn't a download, but it was this idea that one of the trans channelers said that when you leave your body, if another body comes in, the DNA will change. That the DNA is actually controlled by the spirit, that it changes. So we had this one, it's a couple out of the United States. It's a guy who suddenly believed that his dead daughter was inside him. He had lost the daughter in birth, before she was born, and that she was inside of him. And when you see them talk, they're doing like multiple personality. They're altered back, forth, male, female, male, female. And as I said, like when women talk, they can open their mouths. I don't know, men can't do it. They can open their mouths, and you can see their top teeth. So I can tell this woman's talking, and he's talking, she's talking, and it's just the weirdest thing. It's the idea there's two souls. So I ran this experiment. I got them to agree to this, and what we were doing was one left the body on a Friday night. Then we would do the test with the other one on the Sunday, and we did the test, and it didn't work. Like the DNA was, her DNA is his DNA. And yet now I'm thinking maybe it's epigenetic, that it's not the standard genes, it's the epigenetic, because there's definitely, like he's allergic to seafood, she's not allergic to seafood, and he's asthmatic, she's not asthmatic. And this thing with the mouth, where you can tell who's talking just by how they do this. So that's where I'm sort of moving now, is I'm trying to do these sort of experiments. And now I've actually gone, so I figured, well, I've got to go back to the drawing board, so what am I going to do? So I figured, well, I got to start looking at the epigenetic stuff, maybe run a more expensive test or whatever, and I go to my channeler. So you mentioned Albuquerque. One of my best channelers in trans channelers in Albuquerque. So I said to her, hey, I said, I did this test and it didn't work. She says, have you seen these two that in the same body, two souls? I said, that's who I did the test with. It didn't work. I said, can you ask the guides? I know this is not the kind of question they like to ask, but so I'm waiting. It'll be next Tuesday. That's where I'm now struggling to find out why this didn't work. And this whole idea, because you'll even get people who have beings where I'll say to them, like Nancy Tremaine, who was abducted about 2 months before baiting Barney Hill. I said, Nancy, ask him, are you an alien? And then he said, I'm neither alien to this planet or any other planet. I've always been here. And then I had these beings that wanted me to interview them in England. So it's going through a channeler. And so then these beings that call themselves chons, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen. They don't want to be known as anything. They don't have any faces. They're just really weird. I said, so, are you an extraterrestrial? And they go, would you like us to be? We could do that if you want. We could even take you to our planet. But no, we're not extraterrestrials. We've always been here. You're the visitor. And I went, wow. And then there was a woman by the name of Sherry Wild. And I've interviewed her a couple times. Have you interviewed her?
Yeah, I've interviewed
She's a wild. If you look up Sherry Wild, she's got an unbelievable story. And it's called The Forgotten Promise, where they take her and then they tell her, Sherry, have you forgotten the promise that you made? Because she made this promise that she was going to do this, she was going to write this book, and now she's supposed to be doing a movie and stuff like that. And then she said, I'm not writing your damn book. And then she's dealing with a being by the name of Da. And so she finally got the book, and her daughter's got an injunction to stop her. And what you'll find is your relatives don't care about it. They have no interest. Your wife, husband, kids. My kid has no interest in stuff like that. And so she was in a situation where her daughter got an injunction to stop her from publishing this book. She takes it to the publisher, and then she takes it to the publisher, and the publisher says, "Duh, you said this thing's Zeta?" And she said, "Yeah, he's a Zeta." And then he said, "But he said he's from Andromeda." "Yeah, that's where he's from." And he said, "Well, sure, he can't be from Andromeda. If he's a Zeta, he's from Zeta Reticuli." And so then she says, "Really?" She didn't even know. She goes, "Really?" So I'm going to ask him next time he comes. And then she says, "Okay, so what the hell's going on here? Are you actually an alien?" And he said, "No, that would not best describe who I actually am. I'm an etheric being on a mission in the cosmos for the Creator." And that's the bottom line, is we're all etheric beings. All the world's a stage. All the men and women are but actors. They have their entrances and exits. Each man plays many roles. So we come in, they're playing aliens, we're playing human beings, and this is a play that we're all learning through this play. And as they told me, because I did a lot of psychedelics, because I couldn't get in the field. I couldn't meditate. I could meditate, but I couldn't get anywhere with it. And I tried lucid dreaming. I tried all this sort of stuff. And I knew psychedelics, you're going to get in this field. So I did 27 high dose, 5 grams plus of stuff. And I got in the field, and I was there, and for the first 6, it was clear. I said, "I'm just here. I don't want anything. No, I just here. What do I need to learn? I just want to find out." And the first 6 were clear. I knew within minutes exactly what the lesson was going to be about. And it was in there where they said to me, "You think you know what's going on? You haven't a clue what's going on." And then they did this about 3 or 4 times, and about the ego, about, leaving the ego behind. And then finally I got upset with them. I said, What do you mean? I didn't come here to be abused. Like, what? You always hammer me about the ego shit. Okay, you tell me what the hell's going on." And then this voice or message says, "We don't know either." And I go, "Get out of here! You don't know." So I through there I was picking up this sort of idea that it's this world where you can get in there, and there it's the same thing. It's this idea that everything is vibration. And people don't realize that. So that's the next books I'm writing, is this thing about, you think you understand what's going on. This is not solid. It's 99.99% space. There's no color. It's all just vibration, and it's the whole thing. It's all your vibration, and they're just at a higher vibratory level. And if you get people who have out-of-body experiences, or people like in psychedelics, your body is just vibrating before you're going, and it's raising your vibration, and all you're doing is vibrating to a higher level. And then you run into these beings that live at this level, and they're at a higher level. They're coming down to help us raise our vibration up before we destroy ourselves. And I sort of say, well, even if we destroy ourselves, it doesn't really matter, because you're just going to go someplace else and learn. We can make worlds all as many as we want all the time. And if reincarnation is a fact, then everything is a lesson. There's no plus, minus, whatever. It's just a lesson, and you take responsibility for what happened to you, that you may have chosen some bad event, or how you're going to die, or whatever, because you want to learn something through that. And so I've started with the UFO thing, and I basically say there's nothing to worry about, and it's all going to be the spiritual stuff. Like when they tell you, like for example, in lucid dreaming, or in a lot of things like that, where they say, especially lucid dreaming. So it's when you get in the higher states, it's very pliable. You can make things change. You can change, leave and bring this person in. And I want the top healer, and that person will come, and you can just sort of control exactly who's there and stuff like that. And you get the situation where people will be able to do this kind of stuff, but everybody can do it. It's just at that level, it's much faster in able to do it. And that's what we learn, is that we are building the world as we go along. That it's the idea that all dreams are different, all UFO experiences, and all aliens. I was pointing out to you, like, you've got your gray. When you start comparing all the grays, I was putting them together, boom, 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 and you go, they ain't the same. There's no way they're the same. They're different. Or another thing where I hear enough stories, and then I hear this thing where it's weird, where there's a guy, he's head of covert ops for the U.S. military, and CIA guy, very high level guy, and he had the beings in his room, and he's all upset, like, they violated my human rights, and they, like all this sort of stuff, and I'm going like, what do you? I never interviewed him, but I would ask him, like, So when you go to CIA and you go steal shit from around the world, and you ask people's permission, I mean, you think they're doing the right thing. And he had this thing where he said, they asked him, he didn't want to talk about the beings, what they look like, and all this sort of stuff. He said, it's still being investigated. And then the guy said, hey, was there any telepathy involved? And he said, that was the weirdest part. He said, I was there, and he said, I'm standing there, and the beings are there. And he said, there was a being behind me. I don't know if it was a gray or a reptilian or a tall white or whatever, but had this guardian type thing going on about it. I said, the interviewer, I said, guardian type thing? Hey, what side was it on? I said, guardian type thing. And because if you're familiar with the literature, the Newton literature, when you have the life review, your guardian angel stands behind you on your left side. So I wonder what side he's standing. Is this an alien or is this a guardian angel? And then I'm thinking, as soon as I heard that, I go, hey, that's what Robert said too. Robert was this U.S. Air Force colonel that claimed he'd flown the craft. He said, I'm suddenly on the craft. He said, I don't know how I got there. He said, I'm just standing on this craft and there's somebody behind me. I don't know if they're humans or if they're aliens. Nobody's allowed to look. And then he said, the being said, okay, go ahead and do it. He said, I don't know what to do. He said, you know what to do. Just do it. And he looks, there's this panel board, and he puts his hand, and he starts describing how he's flying the craft on this panel board. And so so then I went to Whitley Strieber. I realized, hey, there's this pattern, and I missed it. You know, I interviewed these people. I didn't realize that was a question you should ask. Was there somebody standing behind you? So I went to Whitley Strieber. I said, hey, Whitley, you were in the craft, weren't you? He said, lots of times. I said, do you ever have this experience where somebody's standing behind you and you can't look and they're telling you what to do? All the time. I said, really? He said, yeah, I told you I was going to steal the craft. I was sitting at the panel board and I said to myself, man, I'd like to steal this thing. And he said somebody behind him started laughing. And so you start picking up these patterns, and it all comes down to this mental thing. It's all this mental thing that in the end, God doesn't create the heaven and earth. God creates the sparks of the divine, and everything's made out of consciousness, and we're the ones that are creating it. So if you have 8 billion people who all have five positive thoughts a day, that's 40 billion positive thoughts. And I said the prime example is you take a look at the United States of America in 2015, take a look at it today, and you tell me it's the same country. It's not even close to the same country. All it was one person had a story, it got repeated, and it's a completely different story. And that's how we have it. And so consciousness is rising. That's where you had this thing about it's going to flip, where suddenly it's just going to flip. We're raising the consciousness, and that's what they want us to do. They want us to talk. They want us to exchange ideas. And people say we're not making any progress. We want disclosure. We just want to know what's going on. And I say be careful what the disclosure is going to be, because it may be the fact that it's this spiritual thing. It's got nothing to do with aliens and stuff like that, and they have no control. I'm absolutely sure of it. They have no idea. They were giving a craft. Lockheed Skunk Works had a craft that this James Ryder said he'd been inside, or no, Lukatsky said he'd been inside it, and they had the craft, and they couldn't get in it, and then they were going to give the craft to Bob Bigelow, who's a big business guy out of Las Vegas. Bigelow wanted to do the research, and it was blocked by a guy named Glenn Gaffney out of the CIA, blocked it. But the reason they were going to give it away is because they couldn't figure it out. They had this thing since the 1950s, and they couldn't figure out anything, because it's this consciousness interface thing that they can't figure out. What people describe to me, you go on the craft, they tell you, okay, imagine it in your mind, and when you can imagine it, push the button, or something like that. And what happens is the people sit on the craft, and you touch something on the craft, the craft is alive, the craft is conscious, the craft is like grown, you become one with the craft. Whatever you think is what the craft does. You and the craft are one thing now. And that's what people all describe this thing where they and nobody touches the same thing. Like some people, they say, put your hand on a panel. Chris Bessel put it on a beehive, and I thought that was weird. Like, how can you have 36 people and nobody's touching the same thing? It's not like everybody's touching a panel or something. And you start to realize it's like a dream. Like there's the mean is the same, but when you start getting down to the details start to mix, and then you start wondering, like, is this us doing this? Because if you take a look at abductions, nobody ever sees anybody being abducted. It's always a personal thing where I'm on there and I had this experience of beings there at the end of the bed or stuff like that. But in terms of the world, the way it looks like to me is that it's this pliable thing that we're building with consciousness, and we're developing this, and it's not the physical world people think. And that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to say to you, hey, the world is not what you think it is. It doesn't work the way you think it. And they do it by doing these weird things. A dog sitting there smoking a cigarette, or dino beavers, or these weird things where people go, like crop circles. Nobody's ever discovered who did the crop circles. Cattle mutilations, nobody's ever been arrested for cattle, and they do all these things that nobody can really figure out, and everybody just goes like, what the hell is going on here? And you start to explore, and then suddenly you discover stuff. And as you have all these people exploring and doing stuff, otherwise everybody's just going to sit there and keep watching TV. And that's all they're doing, is they're trying to get, the paranormal is beyond the normal. And every invention comes that way. There's something in science, not even UFOs, science, where you can't figure it out, it doesn't make any sense, and then you start working on it and you put money in it, and suddenly you discover it, and the world changes. That's how the world is changing. It just gets more elaborate, more grand. Whether you're looking out into the galaxy or looking down at the microcosmic level, it just gets more complex and more complex and more complex. And that's what they're trying to motivate us to do, is to look outside of ourselves and look at the paranormal stuff. That's where the inventions are. That's where the Nobel Prizes are. They're not on repeating the same experiment over and over again. Even Descartes, who came up with the idea of the scientific method, talked about skepticism. And everybody says, you got to be skeptical about UFOs. No, Descartes says you're not going to be skeptical about the new things. Descartes said, I may have to throw out everything I've ever learned. Or as Mark Twain says, it's not the things you don't know that get you in trouble. It's the things you know that just ain't so. And we're making these assumptions about how the world works. That's not how it works. And that's what they're trying to tell us. No, it doesn't work that way. And so people say we're not getting anywhere, and I say we absolutely are getting somewhere. Because when I started, if you had a UFO sighting, that's fine. If you had two, you were insane. Nobody had two UFO sightings, because it was believed to be a random event. You just happened to be there when the UFO went by or whatever. And so you can say today, as Max Planck says, you do not convince your opponent in science that he's wrong by showing him the evidence. You win when your opponent dies. And eventually the new generation is not offended with the idea. So the young generation is not. And that's what's happening now. You can go anywhere in the world. You can go to Korea, where apparently they got the big flying saucer. Heard this story outside of Seoul, Korea. They have a saucer that's so big that they built a building around it. And this guy from the Congress is going there. He's trying to get permission to go to Korea to look at this building. And to see, because apparently they built this around this flying saucer, and that's. Yeah. So,
yeah, Greer talks about that.
Yeah, and this is the thing. So you have this thing where they're just doing this really weird stuff, and the weirder it is, the more you get dragged down the rabbit hole. Anybody knows, like if you have a UFO sighting or you have your event, you can try all you want in the rest of your life, and you're never going to get that story. It's like, oh, it's in your head. And that's what they do. You drag you down the rabbit hole, and you can't get out of the rabbit hole. And you got to figure this thing out. That's like me. As soon as I saw it, I had no interest. And there's like, oh my God, there's miracles. I was like, holy, I couldn't believe it. I was just like floored. And my whole life, I just quit university. That was it. I was just like a crazy man, figuring I was going to figure this thing out. And now I've gone to the point where I think I understand better about it, but it's not what I assumed it was going to be. I thought it, when I first saw it, oh, it's an extraterrestrial from another planet or whatever. And now I think it's going to be way more complex. And we are making progress, because you can go anywhere in the world. You can go to Seoul, you can go to China, you can go anywhere in the world, and you can say, Area 51, I know what that is. Skinwalker Ranch, I know what that is. Near-death experience, I don't believe in it, but I know what those are. We all know what these things are now, and what's happened in 2017 when this big New York Times article came out and said, "Oh, the government is investigating UFOs. It's real." And then everybody goes, "Yeah, I knew that already," because they had acclimatized people. The consciousness had risen to the point where everybody, "Yeah, I know that already." And if they said today that we have bodies and crafts, the majority of people just go, "We know that already. Now, where are they from?" And that's why one of the reasons they don't want to is because they haven't figured out this. They can't make the craft move. They can't do anything with it. And the other thing is that they don't want to give away the fact that they don't know how to do this, and so the government's in a difficult position as to what they're going to do. So they're trying to do this gradual disclosure where they're telling you these things, they're leaking it to different people, and I'll try to get them next week. So and this is the last thing I'll say. So there's a guy in Vancouver, he's a film guy, and he was contacted by government people, and said the same. They say the same thing all the time. They said it to Disney. They said it to Steven Spielberg. They say, we're from the government, and we think we'd like to get this story out, and we're here. We'd like to help. We'll give you some stuff, and we'd like you to. They wanted to put in a movie, because that's the way people learn, through movies and documentaries and stuff. So I said to him, you gotta be careful, man. This counterintelligence man, they may feed you a bunch of garbage, whatever. And he started getting involved in this. He got all excited, you know, he's gonna revolutionize this thing. And I sort of pulled out. I was talking, and then I sort of pulled out, and I said, "Okay, go ahead." And he's in Kitsilano, and so I was just talking to him the other day, and I said, "You still got that thing going?" He said, "Oh yeah, yeah. It's just there's Mel Gibson is going to finance the movie," and I'm going, "Mel Gibson's going to finance it?" And they're going to this thing again, and they're feeding him all this material. And the stuff, it's not going to be, it's not nothing you can really prove or disprove or whatever. You're just going to put this stuff out. He's going to put it in his documentary. So I'm going to try to bring him to, I'm supposed to meet with him before, because I don't want to go down for coffee down to Vancouver. Like it's, 2 hours by train and back and stuff. So they said, well, there's a meeting there, UFO meeting at 2 o'clock, and I'll come, we'll go for lunch. And then I'm going to say, come on, let's go to the UFO meeting. You can come down and but he's in the middle of one of these operations where the government is about to drop a bunch of new stuff to him as to what's going on.
Canadian or U.S.?
What's that?
Canadian or U.S.?
He's in Vancouver.
No, the government you're talking about.
Oh, U.S.
Oh, U.S.?
Yeah.
Dropping stuff to...
U.S. controls everything, yeah. U.S. controls. That's what they phoned me one time. It's Ron Pandolfi guy. So people are talking about this disclosure. You've heard about Trump. Trump's going to disclose or whatever. So I know Ron Pandolfi. Ron Pandolfi's the guy that briefs Trump. I may brief him on UFOs. He's briefed everybody since Reagan. He's retired now. So of course, as soon as that happened, then I contacted him. No, the girl that works with me contacted him, and he said the reason he made that is to cover up on the Epstein and the Iraq War, which isn't going to go very well, and once nothing gets revealed, everything's going to calm down. So then there's next disclosure was that he's going to give this speech on the 8th, and that Bob Bigelow is the source, and Bob Bigelow is going to give a news conference on May the 1st, and they're going to actually disclose. But the question is what they're going to disclose. Yeah, UFOs are real. We got bodies and crafts, and we don't know what's going on. We don't know what these bodies and crafts are. So I lost my train of thought. He's following this, and I was actually there. It was the whole thing where they brought him into a hotel room. I'm on Zoom. I'm watching this. The guy's going around. He's checking all the switches to make sure the room isn't bugged. And this is all being filmed. There's real drama stuff and stuff. But they gave away one thing was he was reading this 43-page document, and it said it's not classified. They're giving you it doesn't mean anything. It's not classified. And he's reading it, and then it gets to the second last page, and he says, "Oh, and the Guardian. No, not the Guardian. The Ambassador." I said, "Ambassador? That's what it says?" And my buddy Michael says, "Yeah, the Ambassador." I said, "Pandolfi's involved in this," because this is a joke that Pandolfi took another friend of mine. He's a big artist out in New York. He took him to his place where he works, CIA. And the daughter said, "Oh, Doug, you got to put on a blindfold when you go there." And Doug said, "No, put on a blindfold." "No, Doug, you got to put on a blindfold. You can't go there without a blindfold on." So he puts his blindfold on, and he goes, and they go into this facility, and then they're at the front. You got to sign in. And so then Doug says to him, "Well, what am I going to sign?" He says, "I just put down the Ambassador." So he signs the Ambassador, and then Ron Pandolfi comes back to him and says, "You can't believe how many people came to me and said, 'Who the hell's the Ambassador?'" So when that document, he's reading this document, he says, "The Ambassador." I said, "Pandolfi's behind this. You and me, we're the only people that know about the Ambassador." Nobody knows this story. And so this is the thing. So this guy is now, he's looks like he's getting the financing. He's a Colonel Crow is the guy that's the handler and giving him material, and he's all excited. And they're gonna have this documentary. And so you can see the government does this kind of stuff, and what they'll do, it's always American. So one time they phoned me, Pandolfi's buddy phones me up, and he says, "U.S. intelligence says I should talk to you." I said, "Seriously?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "You realize I'm a Canadian, do you not?" And he said, "Yeah." I said, "Why would U.S. intelligence say to come talk to me?" It makes no sense whatsoever. And what they wanted me to do was do this documentary on the aviary, which is this idea where there's these high-level guys, and they've got bird names, and they're all from different agencies, and they're all working together to disclose the UFO story and stuff like that. And this is what he's working on. The movie's called The Aviary. So now they got him to do it. They wanted me to do it. And I said, I'll research for you. I'll tell you all this stuff, but I'm not going on camera. I have no interest in that sort of stuff. And so I've got these, again, the contact, you got this intelligence guy, you don't know whether to believe him or not to believe him and stuff like that. but they are definitely, they're putting stuff out there, and I think that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to, you give you the story, but you can't prove it or make it go away. And the story just bounces around, and then everybody starts to believe it, and then that's all they want. So that's the situation. So I'll try to bring them to the Vancouver, a meeting next.
Because Zoom, you mean?
No, I'll bring them to the meeting.
Oh, great.
You're downtown next
Yeah,
month,
we
next
did the
week.
library, right?
Yeah, next week. So he's.
Yeah, we're meeting on Sunday. We could do
Yeah,
that.
so I'll go for lunch with him, and then I'll try to drag him to the meeting and see what we'll talk.
Great.
It's up to him what he wants to talk about, because it's his money. I mean, I don't want to blow his project, just tell everybody what's happening. But they're doing the same thing. They've done it 10 times already. They just keep doing it again.
Is this part of the disinformation?
Well, that's the thing, is it disinformation or information? What they do, I believe, is they take information and put disinformation around it, and they put it out.
Yep.
So that when you tell the story, it all falls apart. And then you get blamed for it, and the story, that's what happened with Bob Lazar.
Yeah.
So Bob
Yeah.
Lazar had, from Area 51, the famous Area 51 story, so he was, if you realize this, he had this encounter with Teller. That happened on the first week of November. He had first interview with EG&G at Area 51. Second interview, where the first question in the second interview was, "What's your relationship to John Lear, and what do you think about him?" John Lear was this nutcase, famous nutcase guy that was telling all these conspiracy things. And then the third interview was on December the 6th. December the 6th was when he went to the site and saw the crafts the first time. If you got a Q clearance for the government, it takes you like 9 months to get a Q clearance. He had the third interview in the same day he was on the base, which means they're setting him up. They took him in, and people don't realize they thought he was up there the whole time. He was only there 6 times. I keep telling people he was only there 6 times. And they bring him up there, they show him a bunch of stuff, and they know he's going to go out and he's going to tell John Lear, and everybody's going to go, John Lear's insane. Yeah, go listen to John Lear. They don't have no crafts up at Area
That's
51.
gradual disclosure. I mean,
Yeah, and the story falls apart. And then what happened was they didn't realize that from December till May, John Lear was telling the story. I got this guy up at Area 51. He said they got crafts up there and everything. Yeah, John Lear, don't listen to John
So
Lear.
I think they
And-
wanted the world to know about Area 51.
but they wanted John Lear telling the story, because nobody's going to believe him. And the story gets out. But then what happened was George Knapp from KLS TV, he's won 24 Peabody Awards and Emmys and all this kind of stuff. And he said some guest pulls out in the middle of the afternoon, and they need a guest for the evening news. He said, "Hey, I need a guest. The guy you got up at Area 51? Bring it. We need a guest for today." The guy pulled out. So they bring him, they put him on camera, and then suddenly it's not John Lear telling the story. Now it's KLS TV. There's this Emmy award-winning guy, and the thing just goes viral around the
I
world.
didn't know that.
Everybody shows up there, and they didn't realize that George Knapp was going to tell the story. And then what happened? Clinton actually had to take land, because they were 11 miles away from the base. They were up in the mountains, and people could actually see the base. They could actually see what was going on the base. So Clinton actually took hundreds of thousands more acres away to move them 29 miles away, so they couldn't see the base anymore. They just sort of blew up in their face, and that's the thing. They're doing this counterintelligence thing, and even
But they make mistakes when that happens.
yeah. Even Greer. We asked Pandolfi about Greer. So Pandolfi is this guy, and he claims, and I believe, if they've got technology, it's time travel technology, it's portal technology. I guarantee you, that's the only thing they don't have the anti-gravity, I think, but they got the portal thing. I think they've developed, and so Pandolfi's wife was having a thing on portals. She was talking about portals, and so we got on there with Sid Goldberg from Gaia, and we said, question for Ron, because we know he stands in the background. He's not at the camera. He never goes on camera, and he's always plausible deniability. This guy said it. I didn't say it. You're just lying. You're making this guy's crazy. You're quoting him and stuff like that. And so he says, we want to ask a question for Ron. Does Ron Pandolfi vet everything that Stephen Greer does? And then you can hear Ron in the background. What stuff? And then he repeats the question. He doesn't fall for it. He goes, does Ron Pandolfi vet everything that Stephen Greer does? And then there's this dead silence. Someone says, I think you just got your answer. And he always says that Pandolfi saved his life, that Pandolfi actually rescued him at some point, that they were going to kill Greer. And so he's interacting with Pandolfi. But I always say the thing with Pandolfi, there's people think that you can play games with these guys. You can't. These guys have done this for 80 years. They got billions of dollars to play these disinformation games. And I always say the biggest question in UFOs is not what are UFOs? It's what the hell's Ron Pandolfi doing? I've followed this guy for 30 years. I still don't know what job he has or whatever, but he's just like, he's in the middle, and you don't know if he's a disclosure guy or he's an anti-disclosure guy. And so I asked him about this latest one came up that said that there was going to be this news conference, and then Trump was going to make the speech on the 8th, and they had a big video. They did this video, one of the podcasters did a video. So I said it to Ron, and I just sent it the clip, and I said, your input. And it comes back, fake news. I said, great, thanks. So I just said, want to get him on the record. What do you say? Fake news. So he denied it, but I assumed he was going to deny it. And yet behind the scenes, he this thing with the ambassador, he's in this operation to put more material out. But they don't want to tell you exactly what's going on, because once you spill the milk, you spill the milk. You can't put it back in the glass. So they want this sort of half-baked thing where, you know, it's an interesting field. But in terms of, I would agree with you. I mean, there's absolutely nothing. This is all propaganda by the U.S. military to create a threat, to scare people. Because if you they can scare the daylights out of you, you give them your money. That's it. That's how ads work. You create a need and fill it. You got a problem. You got this problem. I'm going to solve it. And that's what they're doing. Is they're trying to say these evil aliens, if they wanted to fry us, they would have fried us a long time ago or whatever. They're basically came as in wooden ships. And then they were like wearing suits in the 1950s. It just keeps changing, and now it's all orbs.
That's Jacques Vallée's theory too.
Yeah. And I used to think Jacques Vallée was crazy. So
Very, very interesting.
it's
I've got some different perspective, but you've
Yeah.
opened the door.
yeah.
for
I
me.
know your perspective, and that's
Yeah.
true. I mean, I
was listening very carefully, and you now opened the door for me to come through, because I got some things that will probably blow a lot of people's mind.
yeah. It's I say to people, like, if you realize what's going on, you realize this is the Super Bowl of all stories. There's no bigger story ever in the world, and you got to live in the story. I mean, you're living in the story that most people don't even know there's a game. Forget it. They're just living lives of quiet desperation.
Yeah,
They have
don't
no
know,
clue
yeah.
what's going on. Somebody says you got 3 months to live, and then they're scrambling around trying to figure out. And you and I and everybody's trying to figure out how does the world work? Why are we here? What's going on? What are these beings? What are they doing? And stuff like that. And that's what they're trying to get you to think about it. Whereas most people don't think and you can't blame them, because they got to put their kid in soccer, and they got to make a living, and you know they got to travel like you an hour and a half to work or something like that. Where you know people they haven't got time to analyze this stuff. Whereas I'm retired, and as soon as I had this experience, I mean, I just quit university, and all I had was make enough money so I could do this research, just keep going. And then once I figured, if I got enough money to retire, can I get out of here? And then I,
Where's your tinfoil hat? I was looking for it.
yeah, and yet you get, there's so many patterns, like this thing about where people say, oh, my husband and my wife, they think I'm crazy. Like Chris Bledsoe's wife put him in an insane asylum and stuff like that. And I said, that's the way. I think that's to keep you grounded. They're not supposed to support you.
For.
Yeah, that's exactly, because it's never is there ever a case where, you know, like you two are working together, but that's very rare where you get the support. Usually it's like my son, there was one, this last story I thought, so here, Ron Pandolfi, so I have to interact with this guy every once in a while. I just sort of watch what he does, because I know you're not going to believe him anyway. So anyway, one time he posts a photo, because he's always upset at me because he said I'm stealing your quotes. I said, well, you're a scientist. You steal people's formulas. How right you got to use Einstein's formula? You stole it from him and stuff like this. And so he calls me the thief because I steal his quotes. He said they're all wrong, and you're quoting crazy people that are quoting me, and it's not true and stuff like that. So he's now I forgot what was the funny story I was going to tell. Oh yeah, so anyway, he posts a photo one time, and they're all big into guns. So his wife's got AR-15, and so she's at the shooting range, and it's night, and she's shooting the AR-15. You can see the fire coming out the end of the thing. And his famous expression is "loons, crooks, and worse." All you people are either a loon, a crook, or worse. And so then he says, "My wife knows how to take care of loons." So then just shortly after that, my son is here, and it was Chinese New Year. And the next day, and it sounded like a gunshot in the backyard. And so then I go, oh, that's kind of weird. Sounds like a gunshot. And then I'm in my bedroom there, and then boom, another one. And I go, holy cow. And I look out the window and looking around, and I was looking for fireworks, and see fireworks. And I'm in the bedroom, so my kid he comes down, Dad, you in here? And it's like I don't hear him in the other room. Dad, are you here? He comes over, and then I'm in the bedroom, and I said, yeah, I'm right here. He said, you hear that? I said, yeah, I heard that. Sounds like a gunshot. I said, yeah, it sounded like a gunshot. I think it's still Chinese fireworks. And then he says, you just make sure you tell your buddy that you live on the basement floor. I'm up here with the kid. Make sure he knows that you're downstairs when he comes to get you. And so I contacted Ron and said, hey, Ron, it's funny, you know, people think that you might want to kill me. What do you say to that? He didn't reply. I just want to put on the record, you know, people say you might want to kill me. What do you say? But he's this kind of scary, weird guy, very high level guy. You know, the story is, and yet he claims his wife's an alien and she came through a portal. And it's just,
Oh my God.
but I still say it's the ultimate story if you understand what's actually going on in terms of, especially the paranormal events, where you start to see. That's why I asked you not only your experience, but did anything else happen? And then you suddenly see there's all these paranormal events that start to link together, and people realize like, holy cow, you know, this all may be linked together. It's not a. It used to be definitely seen as a unique thing by itself, but now everybody knows the connection that, you know, like 80% of UFO experiencers claim that they've been out of body. 37% of UFO experiencers claim they have had near-death experiences. So I say, is that random? Do you randomly get abducted and then you randomly had a near-death experience? Or are these planned events? And you start seeing these patterns. Or I asked the one woman who does regressions in LA, Yvonne Smith, I said, Yvonne, you regress a lot of people. Anybody ever worse off after they've been regressed? She said, no, never. I said, how many people that you regressed, how many of them have weird paranormal stuff after? She starts laughing, like all of them. Like all of them. And that's true. You start seeing that people, and then you start wondering, is this a random event, or are these people on some sort of mission, which I think we all are. I mean, in terms of, I just moved, it's okay. I'm finished talking. We have to have a session where I don't have to talk.
Let's see exactly what it is.
Because these people, that's the thing is,
So,
Comment.
are you willing to take some questions?
Yeah, you want
No?
a Q&A?
yeah, for 5
Now,
minutes,
people
anybody
don't
has
have
to go.
or time for
I'm
Q&A?
good.
Yeah, it's 4:20 now, we planned to 4:30. but,
Yeah, okay, a couple
Okay,
questions, yeah.
I have a concept of how these craft are controlled, and it's based on how they're created
Okay.
in the first place, and it's through consciousness.
Yeah.
That the ideation and through causation and into the astral form and to eventually into the physical form.
Yeah.
And basically, the craft picks up on your vibratory
Yeah.
state of mind and spiritual condition.
Yeah, that's what people don't realize. It's
Yeah.
everything is consciousness.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
even you go to AI and you say on AI, you go to AI, what is primary? Is it fields or is it matter? And they'll say fields are primary.
Yeah.
So where did the matter come from? It comes out of fields, and if consciousness is a
Yeah.
field. So if you realize consciousness is primary, and everything's a vibration, and that there's just vibrations going in your ears and in your eyes and stuff, and
The
there's
sand,
Yeah. yeah.
what's that called?
Yeah, it's a plate.
It's the plate, and they vibrate it.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
they
it creates a
And then you
res-
see that,
resonance
I
of
mean, quite
You
precise
just see what is.
Yeah.
geometric
Yeah.
shapes.
And we're starting to learn that. We're starting to learn that consciousness is maybe primary, maybe what it's all about.
so.
Like the one guy described, the Feynman, who was supposed to be the smartest guy of the 20th century, I don't think he was, but he talks about, he said, it's the equivalent, if you understand how your mind works, how all this stuff has to be bound together, like what's coming in your senses and your touch and stuff like that, and it's all just vibrations going in, and somehow the mind puts it all together into a thing. He said it's like the equivalent of a bug in a swimming pool, and it's sitting on the far end, and the water is going up and down or whatever, and there's bugs going, and the bug has to figure out who jumped in the pool, when they jumped in the pool, at what angle they jumped in the pool, and it puts it all together. And that's what our mind is, what your mind is doing, is putting all this stuff together. And people don't realize that, like, you know, everything is just a vibration. There is no physical world, and that's when Semivan says, when he said 50% of people in the United States read at a grade 6 level. And he said, and then you're going to dump this shit on them? It's like, when he said, people say they're, he says, no, how do you put it? There does not appear to be any there. So I say to people, what is he talking about when he says that? There does not appear to be any there. People say all we got to do is put the dots together. I'm not sure there's any dots to put together. This is the guy who got a 7-hour briefing by high-level officials on exactly what's going on. He knows where the crafts are, he knows how it works and stuff like that. High-level CIA official, and this is the way he's talking. And then you go like, what's he talking? Or like Katsky when he talks about the ship. When they asked him, well, what's in the ship? And he says, well, there's nothing. There's no engine, there's no fuel tank. And he said, and then he says, and so the question is, what are we really dealing with here? And he says it like a hint. He's hinting, and they just keep going like, "Oh, tell us what's in the craft." And he's trying to give this hint that it's not what you think it is. It's this really weird world that makes no sense until you get this idea about vibration and consciousness and stuff like that. And I think we're moving down that road. And Greer was there, and Greer, they wrote him off.
Yeah.
But Greer was a meditation teacher.
Yeah.
And he had that background where he understood that, and he was picked. They got him at 18 years old. That's when they took him into craft, and that's the thing. He's like the messenger where he's putting their message out.
Yeah, I trust Greer because I've met him a number of times, and I know his spiritual background.
Yeah.
And that was the only thing that made me get involved with what he was doing with his spiritual background. So I trust the man implicitly. Does that mean that we're all perfect and that he's without flaw? Of course he's flawed.
Yeah.
Does he have an ego? Yeah, he's got an ego. I've got an ego.
Yeah.
But the point is that he's done some major work, and yes, sometimes it seems like he's going off on the deep end. But I've got a picture of him with some of the more elite people in the UFO community that was at Rockefeller's Ranch.
Yeah.
You've seen that picture?
Yeah, where Rockefeller brought him in.
So there's a story behind that picture. And the thing is that I look at it this way, that we all have a consciousness, we all have a spirit and whatnot. But the reality is there's only one soul in the universe.
Yeah.
And it isn't Grant, it isn't Terry, it isn't Brian, it isn't anybody in this room. It's all of us and none of us. And we're merely just a reflection. So what's really going on in reality, which is probably a better word to describe it, because the essence is that we bounce ideas and concepts off of each other. And what are we learning? Well, we each learn something, obviously.
Yeah.
But if we're just an emanation of the great divine cosmic spirit, which we call God, then that's what's going on. And so everything is really an illusion around us. There's, as you say, it's all energy. This doesn't exist, even though I'm tapping on it and I feel it. But that's the energy hitting another form of energy.
Yeah.
Right? So...
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've had a remote view where I'm inside a spacecraft. I didn't see any buttons and controls. I didn't see any room. I was just on board, going for a ride.
Yeah.
And I've actually walked on another planet. How did I get there? Through my mind.
Yeah. Well, that's the idea where if you have an out-of-body experience and you float above your body, you say, where's the consciousness? Is it in the head down there? No. The head down there is inside the consciousness. Yeah. And then you can float to the window and you look out the window, that is in my consciousness. And that's where we got to come completely backwards, where we think it's an epiphenomenon of the brain. Mm-hmm. But all you have to do is have an out-of-body experience, and consciousness is not in the brain. It's floating around the room. It's going, and then you could do the same thing with UFOs, where I had the psychedelics, the same thing, where this instant travel, where people describe you can go from here to the other side of the galaxy instantaneously. Mm-hmm. And that's this idea where you see something, like people used to talk about in the psychedelic experiences with the geometric images. And I go, I'm not interested in I see them, but I don't pay any attention. They sort of go away. And then I thought, I should check it out. And I said, I should look at them. And it zoomed in, just instantaneously. They were right up there, right up front. And people describe this, that is, in your out-of-body experience, you decide you want to go somewhere, you're instantly there. All you have to do is think about it. And that's where you get remote viewing. Where are the remote viewers going? Are they, just hang on, I'm flying to the site, I'll be there in a minute. They're instantaneously at the site because the site is within you. You're going within yourself. You're not going out anywhere. You're going within yourself. It's all within you. And that's what Greer's famous expression was. You see her, this Sufi expression, you see yourself as a puny form when within you is enfolded the entire universe.
Yeah, that's from Hidden Words. It's a Baha'i book, and yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, you know, everybody.
I had a strange story. If I can.
Well, let Nancy go first.
Okay, yeah, sorry.
I say it's actually everybody, your spiritual, you have like life after life, your karma.
Yeah.
Then also you have like a high dimension protection guide. Everybody have it.
Yeah.
So when you meditate, you have to open your third eyes and try the energy, and the energy you connect to the high dimension, and then you connect with your protection guide. Then they will, the God energy open your every single cell's DNA system. So DNA system have a different department, right?
Yeah.
You have like a negative things, a positive things. So you have to hold your mind like a peaceful and happiness, a high wisdom, then the connection, then make your life journey is like more easy and happy. You're not like so this is a planet, right? Every place they have some like a bad things, good things. If you have a good energy, you never face some bad things, right? You can handle everything. That's how I think. Because let's just say, like the family, the parents have kids, then what you think, they don't like what you think, right? So this is kind of the parents just give the hard drive, like a DNA system just grow like your body. But the spiritual, maybe the parents and with the daughter and the son is not the same thing. So if we are together here, we are not the same family, we are not in the same country, different, but we have some similar dimensions, so we can actually learn something. So this is shows the individual beings is like the humans, different dimension, different connection. Planet, universe, the designer, the DNA designer, all the beings by DNA designer. Okay, everybody have a DNA system. So your parents give you DNA system just for your hard drive, for your body. But your spiritual is kind of a high dimension DNA soft code, right? And so this planet, the beings, doesn't matter you believe the UFO or not, but it's exactly universal. Only these planets on the beings, but the other planet have beings too. That beings ET, that's a high dimension. You know, this is a kind of a different races too, right? Doesn't matter you believe or not. But my question is, how do you think? You just believe in ET, but we have to know we are the human, we have to connect, so you have to open your connection system with the high dimension ET, right? So the different ET have a different job. They'll have a different work with them too, like a human, they have a different job too, right? The ET have a different job too. So what kind of connection you want, but your connection, you open your energy, the connection, what is the future? Because I believe life after life in human. So this life, you have created good karma for your future life, right? So how you connect with the high dimension ET, then the connection, then get good energy, good karma for the future. That's my question, okay? So, yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
because of the volatility happening around the world, it essentially validates and reinforces how many more people are becoming conscious. Because otherwise, and that's that yin and yang, right? The dark and light, or whatever you want to, So on the high side of witnessing all the volatility everywhere, I think more people are being present and aware.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we are making progress. There's no doubt.
But it's not a lot. You know, it's not a lot. It's
Of course.
horrible.
But then if you
It's not a
take
lot.
eternity, it's not, you know, you got eternity to figure it out. It's like we're Americans, you know, we're North Americans, we want everything yesterday. It's like, it's
I want it now.
like the idea we confuse the UFOs with Santa Claus, or God with Santa Claus.
It could take centuries for this process to develop, right?
Yeah, and that's why they're not, the phenomena isn't disclosing either. It's a process to them. It's like they've done it 1,000 times on different planets. They know
think so.
exactly how to do it.
Based on your talk, I think I'm gonna change my talk.
Okay,
And it may be more off the cuff
not Shake Harbor.
it may be what I think and believe, and you may find that I'm coming across very assertively on it, because it really is how I feel.
Yeah,
And,
you're gonna talk the ship, should we put it on?
Yeah, I'll link things up and all the rest of it. I don't think I'm going. I mean, the stuff that I was going to talk about was somewhat historical,
Yeah.
and I think I'll just leave that for another time. Yeah, I think I've got to go. My wife,
Yep.
I got
Okay. Beautiful. Hope you learned something. Hope you're not scared. Hope you can sleep tonight.
Yeah, say hi.
ETs are peaceful.
Yeah.
Humans are
Guarantee
not.
it. We guarantee it.
Yeah, come back next time, Zeta, and thanks for coming all the way from Langley.
Yeah.
Join us again. You're welcome.
We should actually get together and talk, because I think I've got some questions I wanted to ask you about your books and stuff. So
Okay, good. Well,
enjoyed the talk.
thanks for,
And enjoyed the hospitality.
Yeah,
Nice
thank
meeting
you, yeah.
Okay, guess we can wrap up and say
Yep.
thank you
Yep.
for the talk.
thanks for setting it up. That's the hard part.